Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Portsmouth City Council's Cabinet. I'm Councillor Steve Pitt, the leader of the City Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting. Bit of housekeeping before we start. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble by the Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Would everyone speaking via a microphone note that they are being recorded and broadcast on the website, including anyone making deputations, although there are none today. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those explicitly stating that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they've finished. We've all read the reports, but officers will highlight developments and key points that may have come into play since the publication of the documents. We'll do the introductions before we do anything else, starting to my left.
Peter Bell, City Solicitor.
Natalie Barber-Pill, Chief Executive.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance and Resources.
Alison Harper, Local Democracy Officer.
Judith Smith, Counsel for St Jude Ward on the Planning Committee, so this is a particular interest of mine, and at last back again as a full member of the Labour Group.
Councillor Hugh Mason, St Jude Ward.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, a Cabinet Member for Community Safety, Leisure and Open Spaces, and I cover Nelson Ward, which is Slanshaw, Tipner, North End and Buckland. Thank you, Leader.
Dave Ashmore, one of the Fratton councillors and Cabinet Member for Environmental Services.
Good afternoon, Leader. Chris Atwell, Cabinet Member for Central Services.
Good afternoon, Kimberly Barrett, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Greening the City.
Good afternoon, Nicholas Dorrington, Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education.
Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Lucy Howard, Head of Planning Policy.
Katie Ricks, Tackling Poverty Strategic Coordinator.
Richard Adair, Councillor for Nelson Ward, here as an observer.
Councillor Raymond Denton, Opposition on Planning.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The next thing we need to deal with is, are there any declarations of interest? No. Okay. We do have apologies for absence today from Councillors Peter Candlish and Councillor Sanders, both of whom are on annual leave, and apologies for lateness from Councillor Winnington, who was expecting to be here. His train was delayed. Okay.
Can I bring apologies from Charlotte Gerarda and Graham Heaney, please?
Okay, yes, that can be noted.
Graham's certainly teaching today.
Okay. Minutes of the previous meetings on the 4th of March and the 19th of March have been circulated. Members, are you happy to accept those as a true record of those two meetings? Agreed. Okay, so agreed. Brings us to item 4 on the agenda, and that is the local development scheme. So I'll hand over to Lucy Howard, the Head of Planning Policy. Members, please note that there is a question from Councillor Smythe, so I'll give her the opportunity to ask that immediately after Lucy's presented, and then I'll come to all of you for your comments and questions. So Lucy, over to you.
Thank you. I'm here to present the local plan timetable, otherwise known as the Local Development Scheme, or LDS, after the European opinion arrived 1 working day before we were due to submit the local plan for examination. You have before you the LDS report. Appendix 1 is the LDS itself. Appendix 2 is the Europe letter. We've also circulated a letter from the RSPB and the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust to Councillor Pitt on Tipner West. I can confirm in response to the letter that we are working positively with both organisations to allocate Tipner West for development in a way that benefits both people and nature. In fact, officers are meeting with both organisations tomorrow to move forward on the optioneering work. We are also working with both of them through the Tipner Regulatory Panel. We are proposing a focus change to the local plan to amend the policies which are affected by the Europe decision and or the 2024 MPPF, with which we have to be compliant with. The Europe letter, I say through gritted teeth, is positive in that it was received before submission, saving the Council an awful lot of time and money if it had come after we had submitted for examination. On the negative side, it wasn't the decision we wanted, and on the really negative side, it refers to the wrong regulations, it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't provide reasons for the opinion. This makes it really difficult to prepare a new TIPNA policy and negotiate city deal with government. Talk a bit about the addendum. There are 56 policies in the pre-submission local plan, and 46 of them are completely unaffected by the Europe opinion and the new MPPF. For example, all our heritage policies and all our greening policies can just stay the same. Government guidance says we can prepare and consult on a focused addendum. In the report I've quoted from our KC, King's Counsel, Rob Wharton, who says it's plainly the right way forward. In reality, I would argue that it is the only way we can meet the June 2026 deadline for submission under the current system of planning. We are asking you to approve the new LDS. It's a really important decision for the Council to make, which is why all political spokespeople from all political parties were invited today. If agreed, we will talk again at the member workshop next month on the 20th of May on optioneering, and then the addendum itself will be in front of you in October to agree for consultation. In this way, we all want a local plan for the city that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Ian, is there anything you wanted to add?
Members, not much, really just to highlight that while we have clear deadlines set by government that appear a long way away, June 2026 being the key deadline as highlighted in the report, there is a lot of work that officers will need to undertake, and obviously the appropriate public consultation of the addendum when we get to that point later on in this municipal year. So it is important that that momentum is maintained and the step change of policies targeted, as Lucy has described, is carried out. So I do want to emphasise to members the importance of keeping to this LDS and getting this plan in. Otherwise, we will be in a pretty awful position where a lot of the hard work that the citizens of Portsmouth have done in feeding back on the local plan and this council has done in producing it will be wasted as we have to restart the process next year. So I do want to emphasise that it's a key guiding element that obviously is part of the requirement to produce a timetable in the LDS.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Smythe, you had a question.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got one small question and one larger question, if I might. Thank you very much. I'm back speaking as the Labour Party spokesman. I believe I've always done so. Private telephone calls are always quite useful, but I'm definitely back in the group and able to speak on behalf of the whole Labour group here. I think the question I have is about the relationship between the rewrite of the local plan and indeed the Europe letter from the Minister of the sea defence programme. I know that for some time we've been relying on sea defence's funding to coming partly from government but also partly from any development that we might have there. And I remember when 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when we had a big meeting in here about the TIPNA project and about how many houses there should be there. And I, along with other members of the Labour group, then played a big part in reducing the numbers and trying to get to an accommodation with the RSPB and Hampshire Wildlife over a smaller development, which I believe we had achieved actually by the time the submission was made. So my question is, although the Europe letter seems to imply that that the government is aware of the link with the sea defences, it's not at all clear how. And I've always been aware that if we're going to do sea defence work there, certainly of the traditional nature that we've been done in the part of a hard landscape along the south coast of Portsmouth and indeed on the other side of the island, we will be having to disturb the littoral land and disrupt some of the environmental qualities of that part of the coast. And I would really like to hear a little bit more about how that actually plays out, because although we may not know, there are several slightly contradictory things here that makes me need a bit of reassurance on that. So that's my first question, if any, that could be answered. It's, you know, we need to finish our sea defences, and if this is going to be a long-running delay, we're going to be vulnerable at that point. And also, I don't think you can create sea defences of the nature we've got in our built environment that don't disrupt the precious environment that's provided by the beach, the intertidal zone. And I wondered how that was going to be done in the future and what your plans are for that. Thank you.
Judith, do you want to ask the second question?
Yes,
as well?
the second question is quite a lot simpler. It's about the timing, really. I fully accept and understand what Ian and Lucy have said about that. I've been a very regular attender of Hugh's meetings on a Wednesday together with Raymond sometimes, and I'm pretty familiar with the process and so forth. But you do say in the report, in a sort of dark moment, that because of the great queue of other people trying to get in under their previous and now existing proposals for local plans, that there could be a bottleneck and we might lose out. And I just wanted you to explore that with us. Is that, I know we can't bet on it or gamble on it, but it would be terrible if we had to go back to square one after all the brilliant work that Lucy and Ian and their teams have done on this.
Thank you, Judith. Who wants to come back? Lucy, yeah.
Thank you. With the sea defences, we've got the North Solent Shoreline Management Plan, which designates all the pieces of coast along the Solent for either hold the line or managed retreat. And all of the Portsmouth coastline is designated for hold the line. That includes Tipner. When the Solent Shoreline Management, when the SMP was done as part of the process, they had to do their own EROPI. And there is an EROPI decision on the shoreline management plan and the hold the line designation for Tipner and the rest of Portsmouth, which we used for our own EROPI work and can be viewed on our website and on the Coastal Partners website. You can't do sea defences without causing some damage, and you've got to compensate for that damage, and a huge chunk of work is being done by the Environment Agency to find the compensation land for that. In terms of, if I could refer back to the letter, it is really difficult to understand. It is really garbled, and people can't understand it because it doesn't make sense. So what it says about flood defences in paragraph 13 is just silly. Flood defences are named as a development requirement in policy PLP3 on Tipner, and they were one of the reasons for EROPI. And it's the only way, development is the only way you will get sea defences in Tipner, because it doesn't meet the requirements for funding that the South Sea and North Portsea scheme had. So I hope that answers that one. With the second one, the queue of local plans, there really are a lot of plans going through at the moment, and not all of them are getting through examination, which is quite interesting at the moment. There is a bottleneck. There are the people who submitted by March 2025, like our neighbours, the Isle of Wight and Winchester, who are at examination at the moment. We were going to be in that bottleneck, but we missed it. We're now going for June next year, and there are an awful lot of other people in the queue. I think we need to work collaboratively with our neighbours, and indeed local. I've just joined a PAS group, Planning Advisory Group, which is aimed specifically at local planning authorities who are aiming to submit their plans by by next year. As long as we're in, as long as it's submitted, it will get examined. It's just we will be queuing up with all the others for that examination to happen. Thank you.
Okay, I'll allow you a supplementary, Judith, if you want one.
Yes, thank you. The supplementary is about the seed offences and the need to get rid of what you called just silly response in the Europe. Made me smile because I spent the last 2 weeks looking after a 3-year-old who calls everything just silly. And I haven't quite got to the bottom of what she means. And in your case, are we depending just on the judicial review, or do we have other ways of making this response a bit more coherent? Because I probably know a lot about this, but there are a lot of members of the public that won't know anything about it and will be very confused with something that I agree with you and with my granddaughter is just silly.
Yeah, it's a good term, isn't it? Just silly. Maybe she'll be a planner when she grows up. We are working hard with all our... We've met all our partners who are interested in TIPNet, and we've listened to their interpretations of what the letter said, including talking to the RSPB and the Wildlife Trust. And we are engaging with government, but so far they haven't provided the explanation that we need.
Thank you very much. I mean, I do think you did a splendidly good job with the submission, and I was part of the journey, thanks to Councillor Mason, and I hope you're all able to keep going, keep the team going to finish the job. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, comments, please. Lee.
Well, I'm glad to come in straight after the Labour Party spokesperson. What is it we're doing? What is important to me, not as a councillor for Portsmouth, the whole of Portsmouth, and a ward councillor, along with Councillor Adair and Councillor Fazakerley, is the safety and the security of hundreds of homes across Tipner and North Stamshire and across to Hilsey. I am glad that at least Labour in Portsmouth say that they're thinking about that too. The trouble is they want their cake and eat it. This is now, we had a plan before, a plan that would have funded the sea defences that the Labour Party are talking about, in the same way that we had the plan for the sea defences in Southsea, and Mr Morgan nearly sunk that. They have, over a long period of time, obfuscated over Tipner West, to the point now that since Labour have got into national government, and I don't doubt Mr Morgan and Miss Martin have been leaning on the Labour government, saying, look, this is an issue up here. We've told everybody we're not going to have nearly so many houses as we had before, and they've kind of gone along with them, except they've told us we've actually got to build even more houses than before. But then the last government, I believe, a £500,000 more homes. Because Mr Starmer came out, didn't he, and said, we are not NIMBYs in the Labour Party, we are YIMBYs. Yes, in my backyard. Yes, everywhere, except Tipner West, to try and give a hand up to Mr Morgan and Miss Martin. So, I'm not being political, I'm just telling it how I see it. And the trouble is, the Labour Party, all those years ago when they started down this track, said it's terrible. They're going to have all these luxury houses and flats built on Tipner West with all these lovely views and all this sort of thing. And by doing what they've done over that period of time, and this IROPE letter and the intervention of the minister, means that the chances of luxury housing is much more now than even before. And I say that because we still have to fund those sea defences. We haven't got the money. There's no budget in this city council for funding sea defences, and I'm sure Councillor Mason will tell us how expensive they are shortly. What does this mean? This means that the Labour Party are risking the homes and the business and the trades of all those houses across North Stampshire and Tipner and across the Hillsea from flooding. I don't know how many of us have seen those huge icebergs breaking off into the sea and the sea levels rising, but it is happening. I have no idea whether I'll be dead before the water starts to come over at Tipner. What I do know is that I want to do everything within my power before I leave this council to make sure that the homes in Tipner, North Stampshire and across the Hillsea are defended in the same way as all the houses from the top of the city all the way around to Old Portsmouth and across Hillsea are defended. Now, if those homes need defending, then so too do the homes of Tipner, North Stampshire and Hillsea. And I won't take any mealy-mouthed words from the Labour Party in Portsmouth over this. They have, for such a long time, sought to sink Tipner West. For such a long time. And they have held it up. And now they're in national government, they've created a dog's dinner about it. And it's an absolute travesty. Now, people up there, they're enjoying the hot weather right now. It's nice and dry, and everything's hunky-dory. But what happens at one time we get one of those awful floods that we're seeing all around the world now, and the sea level's rising there, and it comes over Portsmouth, comes into Portsmouth Harbour. It's a really important issue, but you can hear the officers' frustration. You can see it in the report. It's a silly position that we're in. Nobody knows where it's going. Nobody knows what will happen. Least of all the bloody minister, quite frankly, who has absolutely no idea. They don't know what to do with it. We had a plan. The Labour Party have sunk it. Let me say this also in conclusion. And they have sunk it, Councillor. Let me say this in conclusion. I've always been in a difficult place over the balancing of nature and wildlife together with the housing that's needed to create the sea defences. I love nature very much indeed, but I also value the lives and the business and the trades and the value of the houses in Tipner. But the plain fact is, once you start to build these sea defences that the Labour Party say are needed, and we agree with, you impact the environment, don't you? You impact the nature there. You build it up. So those wetlands, which the RSPB and a whole bunch of other people say that they want to retain and keep and so on, either they go under the water in any event, or we build around them, and by that we destroy what it is everybody says that they want to keep. We had a decision, we knew where we were going, the Labour Party have sunk it for political reasons, and that's all there is to it.
Hugh?
Thank you, John. Slightly different from the last speaker. I wish to refer to the documents which you have in front of you. Members received a letter from the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust and the RSPB. And it's important that going forward, we continue to try to work with them, to involve them at every stage, not merely because they have wildlife expertise, but of course because both of them are very powerful lobbying bodies. If we are going to get our revised plan accepted, I think we do need to work with these bodies as far as is possible. And so I welcome the letter in that it is positive. It is, however, in my opinion, very disappointing in two respects. Firstly, that the two bodies have welcomed the fact that the IROPI proposals have been overturned. The advice is negative from the Minister, and they welcome this. However, they will know no more than we do on the reasons for the IROPI advice. What they are currently welcoming may well, when we get to detail, they might not approve. They might not like it, and we'll have to face that when we come to it. However, it is also a very naive letter. They refer us to the Kingsbrook development near Aylesbury. Nothing could be further from the situation we have in Tipner than the situation around Aylesbury. There, they are building 2,450 homes on 306 hectares of good land. No contamination, nothing at all. Building there at 8 homes per hectare. 8 homes per hectare. If we were to build at that density, we would not be able to build the 814 homes which we are planning for the Tipner Peninsula. We wouldn't even be able to build half of that. My back-of-the-envelope calculation is that depending on how much land we will need to take for the sea defences, and I will come back to that, we would be able to build between 97 and at a maximum 110 properties. It is not a fair comparison, and they should know that. On the IROPI letter itself, the letter which we have received from the Minister, we have tried very hard to get clarification on reasons, because we cannot address the problems which the Minister sees unless we know the reasons. We have written to the Minister. We have not got responses within the statutory time scale. They are temporising even to this day. And remember, this is now almost 2 months since we received the original letter. We have had to go to our lawyers and instigate a judicial review in order to force, as far as we can, the government to give us the detailed information of why they have rejected this IROPI. We need to know that, otherwise we could be overturned at the last minute. So I would now walk on to the sea defences. The sea defences, both the Environment Agency and the Southern Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, are very well of the dilemma which we have, in that unless we can raise a considerable amount of money from the developments on Tipner, we will not be able to afford the sea defences. And the reason for that is that government money is still only available for sea defences to protect existing homes. There are no existing homes on Tipner West, although we might push the point that the waters could come under the motorway. But we need to finance this, and it could be anything up to about £30 million, I am told, from other sources. And so we do need to develop Tipner West one way or another in a way which will produce sufficient funds that we will be able, and I suspect it will not pay the whole cost, but we'll be able to go ahead with some form of sea defences. What we can do there depends very much on the amount of land we will have to take and the type of sea defences which we will have to establish. There are options, but nonetheless, we are in a very difficult financial position when it comes to financing the sea defences. Those things being said, I would commend to the Cabinet the timetable which you see on page 32 and 33 of your papers. It is a realistic timescale, although as I have said it will to a certain extent depend on getting clarity on the Minister's IROPI advice. Assuming that we can get clarity fairly rapidly, this timetable is highly realistic and will enable us to submit in time. I commend it to the Cabinet.
Thank you, Hugh. Members, any other comments? Matthew, can you say who you are? I gave your apologies for lateness, so you just...
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Matthew Winnington, Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing, Health and Care. Apologies for... no, nothing to declare. And apologies for lateness. I was returning from a campaigning trip in Lincolnshire and good old South West trains. As usual, it was late. So I'm going to pick up on an aspect of both what Hugh and Lee said in their responses. I'm going to start with Hugh's, and I think there has been a lot of naivety around this entire situation with Tipner West from the beginning, from people who I think mean well, but quite frankly, I don't think live in the real world. Don't live in the real world of the reality, and this has been touched on just now around the sea defence things in particular, about the reality of having to make sure that we build those and protect those, but also, and this is the worst thing about this IROPI response in my opinion, because it goes well beyond what was even being talked about before the opinion was sought that we had to do, which was about the fact about the bridge. Now, under the city deal, the bridge was never part of it, but it was part of the idea around opening up the employment space in, or any development we did, which we did marked employment space on Horsey Island, and that's just one part of it. It would be access to that for all vehicles, but it would also be a key part of something we had, another thing we had government funding for, which was the bus rapid transit. So for those of you who don't know, we got funding for that with pretty huge amounts in there with our BSIP scheme and all things to do with buses. But like you have a rapid transit between Gosport and Fareham, the idea has always been that there would, there's other work we do on existing roads, but that would also include cutting off that big corner and having rapid transit for buses, because it'd be straight through for buses, for cycling, for walking. There would be access only for private vehicles. To open that up to get to Havants and beyond, and even round to Gosport, if that's something that would be routed. But this IROPI decision stops a bridge being built. So not only does it take away the development of that land for economic reasons, for business purposes and economic development, it also takes away something we also got funding from government on. So again, government has given us funding, and let's remember that though governments might change in colour, a lot of this work, when it's been done by, whether it's BSIP funding for buses, or whether it's stuff to do with excuse me, city deals and IROPI, etc. A lot of this is just day-to-day business stuff. It's not party political. It's just things that civil servants give advice to ministers on, and ministers pretty much say, yes, we agree with this, this meets the criteria, and we go along with it. Which is why I come on to Councillor Hunt's point, and this is where it is a political decision that's been made. Because I have absolutely no doubt, bearing in mind all the information we were getting from the departments over all this time, and basically saying, you don't really have anything to worry about, we think there might have to be a few tweaks here and there, but we're pretty much going to go ahead with this, and IROPI. So when the decision was made and we got it, it was a surprise that it was negative anyway, but it was also an even more of a surprise that it had such a wide range of effect, because that was well beyond anything that we were expecting. So something must have happened in the interim for that to happen. And what has happened in the interim is there is a new government. Now, I think all of us can speculate on what the reasoning behind that is, why that political decision was made. And I think it's a bit of populism. I think it's people backing the wrong horse, a bit like when Councillor Hunt mentioned about the MP for Portsmouth South when he was first elected, backing a wrong horse and trying to torpedo our sea defences in Southsea, which fortunately didn't happen, but that could have been that would have been devastating if we'd lost that funding because the government had listened more to an MP rather than all the work we've been done over, well, literally decades. I always say my first meeting as a councillor back in 2012 was around sea defences. That was what it was. I mean, Councillor Mason has been working on sea defences for a decade, nearly a decade longer than that, when he was first elected back over 20 years ago. So it is a political decision, and my appeal to the Labour Party in Portsmouth, and as I say, I think the party as a whole, I think, have been a bit all over the place on this. Councillor Smythe has been very supportive. I know that throughout this process. There are some members of her party who haven't been. There are some who I think have been led by their nose a bit by outside forces. But there is an opportunity for Portsmouth Labour here, and the opportunity for Portsmouth Labour is do what we did in coalition. When we were leading this council, when we were on the council and when we weren't leading the council and when we were in opposition, we wrote to our ministers and we said, when you've got things wrong for Portsmouth, put it right. So there's a real opportunity for the Labour Party in Portsmouth to say, look, you've got this wrong, you can put it right. You have that leverage that none of us do. No, we don't, Pitt don't, Conservatives don't. You do. You're Labour, you are the same party. And say, look, we support this report that's come here today, the opposition to the IROPE decision. Can you look at it again? And actually, this is really damaging. It's not just damaging in terms of redevelopment of Tipner, whatever you think about that, but the extent of it is really damaging for our economic future and our future for sustainable active travel to link Portsmouth. And that has been in the mix for years and years and years. So it's a very good report, and I think quite frankly, it's quite a hard-hitting response, and I'm really pleased that the officers and all the work that's been done on this, because it is a really hard-hitting response, and as has already been said, there's a lot of nonsensical things in here, and we're asking for something that, and anyone who wants to read the report, it's not often you get an officer's report which basically says this is completely ridiculous, which is effectively what it says. That this doesn't make any sense, and we're pushing back very, very hard on this from the beginning. And the biggest, obviously, the bigger picture, getting away from Tipner West and everything, the bigger picture is the longer this goes on, the more it delays us getting a local plan in place. And we have to have a local plan in place. And all the work that's been done on it, by officers, by members, the scrutiny that's gone into it, has been absolutely immense. This is the second local plan I've been around while I've been a councillor, and I know how much work it takes. So for it to be at the point of being put through to get to the next stage of the process, to be stopped and then have to go back and do this again, have this special cabinet today, it's just incredibly frustrating. So my message to the government, as a cabinet member, as part of this administration, as a citizen of Portsmouth, is sort yourself out. And my plea to the Labour Party locally is you have the leverage, as you are the same party as the government. You as a party get in contact with your government, use your 2 MPs and say, look, this is a devastating decision. This is making things worse. by delaying things. We need some clarity and respond to what our officers would not put what they put in the reports if they weren't serious about it. They just wouldn't do it. That's not the way Portsmouth City Council officers work. They are serious about it. They should reverse the decision, or at least they should give a reason why they've made that decision so they should do it. But absolutely, they should take out of scope things like the bridge and some of the other bits and pieces, which are, quite frankly, devastating to do that, and potentially even put sea defences in, because that's just not good enough. So I commend this report in all parts, and those are my pleas. And as I say, I'm just frustrated, and local plans are frustrating at the best of times, but when something like this happens, it's enough to drive you spare.
Leader, before you round up, can I just get some clarification about this? To the other thing that concerned me is that the maritime industries that we were all really pleased that would help to regenerate Portsmouth, and I'm sure you'll touch on this, the skills that it bring into Portsmouth. I'm at a difficult time for industry across the UK and trade and all this sort of stuff. The Aropi letter, so far as I'm aware and I understand, means that we couldn't dredge at the place where we need to in order to enhance the deep water, in order to ensure that those high-skilled maritime industries, whether that be Plessy, if they're still around, or British Aerospace or whatever, can come there and set up and create businesses there. Again, if that is the case, at a huge cost and disadvantage to Portsmouth's economy as a powerhouse in the southeast region. And the other thing I wanted to finish on, Leader, and you probably know more about this than me, is whether or not, I see it's touched on in the report, local government reform. You know, I think in the report it infers, but it's not clear, it's a little bit ambiguous really, as to whether or not, if these policies are adopted eventually, that they will apply to Portsmouth solely, or will the other plans, I mean, I suppose the quick question is, what weight will the Portsmouth local plan have if we move into local government reform? And I can tell the Labour Party, again, nobody wants it at all, not across the city.
There's a couple of questions in there, but also some other statements have been made. Colleagues, I'm very aware that we are not wanting at this stage to interpret the letter that we've received beyond a certain point, because it is actually the very ambiguity of it that we are principally challenging, for a greater understanding of what it means and what the reasoning is behind it. I'll be honest with you, when I read it the first time, I thought the first half of it sounds like a pretty standard ministerial letter, and the second half of it looks like it was toshed off by a spad. Because it's not written in the kind of language that I would expect to see a serious legal opinion be given. It's a load of jumbled nonsense. And as we've already heard today, the officers have been pretty dismissive of it for that reason. It's not logical, it's not clearly laid out, they have not shown on what evidence they have relied. And let's put it this way, what they were judging was not a letter from us, it was a full-scale submission and evidence for the Iropi decision. How they have treated that is a badly toshed off 3-page letter of, no, you can't do this, maybe. But not even clarity on whether we can or can't in certain bits of it. So I am going to ask Lucy to come back here and just partly confirm that what I'm saying is correct and that we do need caution around any attempt to overly interpret what we've been told to date, but also pick up on a couple of the points that have been made for accuracy, please.
Yes, thank you. It's difficult to interpret the letter because, as I said, it's just so vague, which is why we're getting clarification. In terms of the local plan in post-local government reorganisation, it is only ever for the administrative area of Portsmouth, and so it would never, once adopted, apply to anywhere beyond the city boundaries. I don't know what will happen post-local government reorganisation. My guess would be The same thing will happen to the local plan as happened a few years ago when the government decided local development frameworks would be a jolly good idea. And that's when the 2006 Portsmouth plan, certain policies from that were saved and carried forward and are still used today. But I do not know the details of what will happen for definite after reorganisation. But the best possible situation as a city we can have in terms of planning is to have a sound local plan, which is more than an awful lot of our neighbours will have. Thank you.
Ian, did you want to add anything?
Just to provide that reassurance, so the city already has part of the city under one development plan. Milton has a neighbourhood plan, which is a development plan just covering that neighbourhood area, the Milton, a bit of the Baffins ward. So in a local government reorganisation, that is the most likely immediate scenario. Part of a new local government entity, including Portsmouth, would have development plan, the Portsmouth local plan covering it, and adjacent bits, if they were incorporated into a new authority, would also have their local plans. It's not an unusual or undeliverable system. And as Lucy says, there's other examples where, as that transitions forward to new plans being made, there are ways to save and transcribe policies across. All of that, I agree with the point I would want to draw from that, is we do need to continue adopting the plan. Every day we don't have a plan, we're missing out on the opportunities of some of the things that you've asked to have in this plan that are benefits to the community, protecting community assets, increasing accessible requirements on homes. These are all policies that we'd like to adopt, but we can't until we have the new plan, and consequently you can't require developers to do them on the ground yet. But the quicker we get a plan through, things like that can start being planning policy and can be obligations on it. So the necessity of getting this targeted plan through, we spent a lot of time talking about the ROP case today. Of course, this is a report on the local development scheme and the timetable and the agreement to the concept that we will do this through a targeted addendum on those things we need to change. That is what we're asking you to determine today, to highlight that really important. So we need to have a efficient but robust process of getting the plan amended from its previous version to a new pre-submission version that we feel is the correct plan for Portsmouth and into government in good time before June 2026.
Thank you, Ian. Did anybody else want to come in before I sum up? Judith, I've given you several bites of the cherry. Okay, go on. Very briefly, though, please, because I just want to sum up.
If I were in the Cabinet or able to vote, I would vote for this recommendation. It's a good one and it's sound and it's well put. I will newly return to the Labour group for reasons that nobody's been able to explain. Will give my personal commitment to taking this, which is one of my passions in local government work. I've worked hard alongside Hugh and Raymond sometimes, and officers, I hope, to make this happen. Since we achieved some reduction in the numbers, I think it is a really good scheme that we put forward, and I will go on trying to work in all the channels that are open to me as a member of the Labour Party to do so. And thank you, Councillor Winnington, for acknowledging that I've been supportive. I've been supportive and hard-working on this, and I'm passionate about this agenda. And I will informally be able to report back. I think it is important that all channels that we have open to us can be used now that we have a Labour Party. I just wanted to give that reassurance. It's a personal commitment. I'll discuss it with the Labour group, but I'm sure here they will be fully behind me on this.
Thank you very much. Good to hear.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just a final couple of points in summing up. A huge weight of evidence went in to the government, and what we've had back is just not acceptable. So we will continue to pursue them because we need that in order to inform what we do next. I did want to touch on a couple of points that have been made around the balance that will need to be struck around providing sea defences and whether or not it's possible to do that and leave everything as it currently is in terms of the ecology. And the answer is just flat out no, it's not. But then it's about how it's mitigated. What we can't do, or what nobody could do, not just this council, but any anybody looking to do development can't fund something that is unfundable. So something has to be viable on that bit of land in order to go into the LDS. We can't just draw some houses on there and say, yes, we put them there. It has to be viable. Now, the issue before with the viability, which went through a full council meeting and several meetings before that, showed that the scheme that we wanted to put forward, which we asked for an IROPE opinion on, was the most viable scheme, and that others added tens of millions of pounds of extra cost that would make the schemes undeliverable. Now, in a local plan, if you put in a policy for a development and it is clearly undeliverable under any circumstances, it will be rejected by the inspectorate. Is that true, Lucy? Thank you. So the idea that we can just cook up something that looks lovely when it's absolutely undeliverable will neither provide homes on Titner West, nor will it provide the 800 jobs on Titner West in highly skilled maritime jobs that are really important. It's the last opportunity on the south coast to do it, not just on our side of the channel, but on the European side of the channel as well. The French and Belgians, they don't have a suitable location available to develop in this way. And I would remind you that what we are asking to reclaim on the northeast corner of Titner West was 0.49 hectares. This wasn't a massive reclamation scheme. Those options were dismissed years ago now. What we had was a request in order to square off the quay and be able to use the channel. We now end up in a ridiculous situation where if the MOD want to dredge their bit of Portsmouth Harbour to get the carriers in and out, they'll go and do it tomorrow. Whereas if we wanted to dredge a bit in order to bring in maritime industries, we're not allowed to do it at all. It was always my view, and consistently my view, that the land at the south of the firing range would be a very difficult case to make. So I was kind of expecting, and not something that the officers would necessarily agree with, but I was kind of expecting that the IROPE decision might come back to say the case hadn't been made for the land south of the firing range, but it had been made for the bits to the north, because nobody had been arguing about the bits to the north. They were never controversial at full council. They were included in every single option that we looked at. Nobody spoke out at any point against doing the bridge or the 0.49 hectares of reclamation in order to deliver the 800 jobs. Not one member of Portsmouth City Council spoke out about that from when we relaunched this process. That's the bit that frustrates me. It seems to me a lazy decision. It's that, oh, this is all just a bit too difficult, so we'll just say no, and not a considered and validated opinion using the correct points of law and the correct legislative frameworks. That's the clarity that we're seeking, and we're going to need that, or there's not going to be anything for Titner West going in the local plan, and the government's going to like that even less because we'll be even further short of our housing target numbers. So this is a mess, but it's a mess. At this point in the road, this is a mess of the government's making, and they need to fix it, because Lee's absolutely right. There is the bigger issue of defending those homes and businesses in Stamshaw, Titner and across Hilsey. That has to happen, and if the only affordable option for sea defences is to put some earth bund around it because the amount of development is not achievable, then there will be no homes built on Titner West, because a grass bund won't defend it. It will defend the land mass as it currently is, but it will mean nothing ever gets built there. And the other point, Judith, for you to take back, if you would consider it as part of that feedback, is we have the listed magazines on the area where the employment site is going to be. And those listed magazines absolutely have to be preserved because they're listed, and Historic England will expect us to do something with them. The opportunity to do that was the investment into the Marine and Maritime Hub. Where does that leave them now? And also, most of the Titner West landmass, pretty as it may look at the moment with grass growing all over it, is contaminated land, and if we don't clean it up, then the leachate will get out into the harbour, and that will cause far more environmental damage than anything else would. So it's okay, and I understand it's their job for people like the RSPB and the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust to constantly make the case that they do. I accept that and I understand it. But what I don't understand is the logic illogicality of making an argument that actually makes the situation worse. And that's the thing that's always been very difficult. We have to do development there to protect the rest of the harbour, because otherwise all that stuff that's in that landmass is going to leach out and cause further damage. So we've known all of this for a long time, and that's the wider context of it all, but it's why it's so important that we get that clarity from the government, so that in amending a policy with an addendum to the local plan, we've got something that's credible, because if it isn't, those numbers are all coming out, because legally we'll have no choice. So this is crunch time. So we absolutely essential we keep the pressure on the government. Okay, at that point, if nobody else got anything to say, are we happy to approve the LDS? Yes? Thank you, Lucy and Ian. We know you've got loads of work to do. We'll leave you to get on with it, and we'll be updated, I assume, at the next key point. So thank you for that, members. That brings us to item 5 on the agenda today, which is the Household Support Fund update proposals from Katie Ricks, who's replaced Mark Sage.
Thank you very much. So the report outlines the support the Council is providing through the local delivery of the Household Support Fund in response to continued cost of living pressures. We know that households in Portsmouth are continuing to struggle with the ongoing cost of living, with 76% of residents being concerned about the rising costs. Our cost of living helpline between April 2024 and March 2025 saw over 1,550 calls. The energy price cap rise, water bill increases, and the freezing of the local housing allowance are all impacting on day-to-day living costs. This is resulting in increased borrowing and arrears, a rise in material deprivation for working-age adults, and an increased number of children who are living in poverty. We also know that low-income households are the most affected by the continued cost of living pressures. The Government's Household Support Fund remains the primary source of local welfare support for local authorities, having been extended 6 times since its introduction in 2021. The funding helps vulnerable residents with essential daily costs like food and energy bills, and obviously addresses the cost of living crisis pressures. Local surveys have identified that without the Household Support Fund, many households in Portsmouth would go hungry, there'd been an increase in food bank use, and also increased debt. It is not known at this time whether the Household Support Fund will be extended past March 2026. For the previous round, which has just ended, which was 6 months between October 2024 and March 2025, the Council delivered support for the full allocation of 1.88 million. For the next 12 months, 2025-26, Portsmouth received an allocation of 3.32 million. This is the first time the funding has been reduced and has seen a reduction of 11.9%. The reduction is being managed by reducing the value of vouchers issued to households in receipt of free school meals, by reducing grants to our food support organisations, and also reducing funds across some of our other schemes, including our application-based schemes. For this round, there's also increased emphasis on preventative support, which leads to a longer-lasting impact. This has been factored into the delivery plan for 2025-26, which has been developed, which includes 4 application-based schemes, one of those being our exceptional hardship scheme, which opened today for the first round of funding. Food vouchers issued for our schools, proactive schemes, for example, those targeted at disabled households and homeless households resettling, increasing our money advice and guidance provision in the city, benefit uptake activities to maximise household income and reduce costs, extension of our HAF Fund Pompey programme, and grants again to our food support providers, which includes food banks, pantries and larders, and community meals. The delivery plan forms obviously Appendix 2 of the reports. This plan can be revised in response to local need throughout the next 12 months and will enable the Council to continue to make best use of the funds to support those most in need in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Members, any comments or questions? Lee?
Well, look, thank you so much indeed, and thank you very much for all that you're doing on behalf of people who have next to nothing, quite frankly. And I just ask members to come to one line on page 7 at 3.7.2. the 11.9% reduction in HSF funding will largely be managed via reducing the value of food vouchers issued per child via schools and through the family voucher application scheme. I returned it. I don't understand, Leader. These are the poorest people in marginalised communities. And the Labour government, who I've just lost all hope about, I was optimistic originally. We were told that things were going to change. We all thought the change was for the better, but you go and ask these people here who are receiving an 11.9% reduction in JS funding managed through on the food vouchers. Ask them if it was changed for the better. Ask for a whole range of people, and I know a whole bunch of people don't like hearing this, want to pretend it's not happening because they think Labour are really nice and so on. Labour are darned cruel. This is really cruel, what's going on right now, attacking the poorest in our community. I could go on about bankers and all that sort of thing, but that starts. But they are attacking and taking away. It's true, we see it every single day in the newspapers and in the media. We see the poorest in Britain having more money taken away from them. And at the same time, the cost of living, energy, which was supposed to have been capped, and the cap was supposed to be reduced, that hasn't happened. It's all been lies. And I don't use the word lies lightly. It has all been lies to grab power. And the people paying for it aren't the rich and the famous. They'll always be fine. The people paying for it are the poorest, the weakest, the most marginalised in our communities, which is why we've sat round under your leadership for so many hours trying to find ways to juggle money, less money, and direct it to the poorest and the most marginalised at the cost, frankly, of some of the other poorest people in our city. It is ultra cruel, and I never expected this. And the words fail me. Well, clearly they don't. But words fail me. This is under a Labour government, worse than the last Conservative government. And people might say, well, why are you politicising this, Lee? I'm not politicising it. I'm just speaking facts. Poor people are poorer and worse off under Labour. Now, how do you wrap that up in any kind of way and say actually things are better? They're not better. I've made my point. I feel extremely let down by Labour, and I see no hope in the next 3 or 4 years of it improving. I feel so sorry for people who don't have the sort of income that I have. And yes, before anybody asks, Richard and I do utilise our income to support friends and families and other people that we can around the city.
Thank you, Lee. Members, anyone else? Hugh?
Two things. One, backing up what Councillor Hunt has just said, those of us who, in one way or another, deal with some of the poorest people in this city recognise that they are now in a very dire situation where, were it not for what little the Household Support Fund and other funds can survive, they just would sink completely. They would sink without trace. So this fund is actually vitally important. And it is a disgrace that it has been cut back in the way in which it has been cut back. That's point one. Point two, on the scheme as it has been implemented by our officers, I must commend the flexibility. This could have been all put in one bunch or another bunch, but what has been done is that they have responded to need by being exceedingly flexible and exceedingly imaginative in the way in which they have delivered this plan. And I think that they need to be commended for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. Kimberly?
My colleagues have pretty much jumped on the things that I was going to say, but this cost of living crisis, it's not going away and it's not getting any better. As has been outlined by Councillor Hunt and Councillor Mason, the bills continue to go up. We only need to look at the recent water bills where they're going up sometimes over 50%. I've had, funnily enough this morning, I had a conversation with a resident who called me who was really upset because they didn't know how they were going to pay their payday tomorrow, and they had no idea how they were going to make payments for various things because their wage, with the bills increasing last month, they had no idea. So I had to do a referral to a food bank at that point, and it was someone who you would never think would actually have to be referred to a food bank. So I constantly hear, and I'm sure colleagues around the room constantly hear these devastating stories, and things are getting worse. Loss of winter fuel payment, you know, the energy bills and other bills going up. Then there's this whole situation going on with PIP and disability payments that might change and make things worse. We shouldn't be putting the burden on the poorest members of our society. It's like Councillor Hunter said, it's unbelievable that this government is doing that to people. And I think we as a council, as a Lib Dem administration, I think we should be incredibly proud of the work that we've done and the work our amazing officers have done by making sure that we can, whatever funding that we have has, because let's remember that we as a council are facing continual cuts all the time as well, and we're trying to make the best of this situation. And I think we have gone above what many other councils can or have been able to do by doing the older person's winter fuel payment that we've done last year, and by doing half placements, and by doing this fund as well. All these little pots, you know, they do make a difference, and the fact that, you know, previous years with the car boots, that money has gone to funding money to food for the pantries, for dog food, because, you know, let's be honest, you know, there are a lot of people with pets that, you know, we absolutely adore them, and, you know, they are a lifeline for many people. And, you know, that isn't often thought of, but that's what we've done as a council. We are doing this so that we can try and protect and secure and help the most vulnerable in society when government are not doing that. So I just want to put on record my thanks to the officers for working extremely hard for the people, the most worse off, deprived people in society in our city. Without you, we wouldn't, you know, the whole situation would be much worse. So I'm incredibly thankful to you all, and long may you continue the work. I mean, I wish it wouldn't have to be like this, but I appreciate everything you're doing. I know my colleagues do as well, so thank you.
Colleagues, anyone else? No? I think it's appalling that they've cut it by just on 12%. When we keep hearing about their plan for change on the local MP's Facebook page every single day, he's not doing press releases that say his plan for change involves cutting support to low-income households by 11.9% this year, is he? I just find it all a bit shameless, to be perfectly honest. And I completely agree with you, Lee. When the general election happened, I was optimistic. I thought we're at least although I have differences with the way the Labour Party do things, I don't like their top-down do-to approach, which we can see writ large with LGR. But they're supposed to at least have a social conscience, and they don't appear to have one. I just don't understand this at all. I mean, just within that period since they came in, if you remember, the money that we had put to one side to try and create a soft landing if household support fund went under the previous Conservative government, it didn't. The Tories kept it going, and then Labour have cut it by 12%. But we utilised that money for the Portsmouth Older Persons Energy Payment because they cut the winter fuel allowance with virtually no notice, not giving people time to budget. And we've helped, Katie, can you remind me how many families roughly we've helped now? It's well over 1,000, isn't it?
Yeah. It was 1,140 odd.
Yeah, I thought it was around about 1,100. There's 1,100 local families that we've given that payment to, giving them an extra 12 months to budget for the impact of the winter fuel allowance. And just yesterday, I was pictured outside the civic offices with Southern Water, who are not always our friends, I know, but we have worked with them on a public sector data sharing arrangement, which now sees an extra 5,000 low-income households in Portsmouth having their sewage bills reduced by £170 a year, which more than offsets the increase for those households. Now, it's not enough. We all wish the bills hadn't gone up in the first place, but it's real and meaningful, and those 5,000 households don't have to do anything. It will just come off their bills. So all in all, with the people who are already on that scheme, there'll be 8,000 Portsmouth households who are getting that reduction in their payments. That's because we as a council have been proactive and worked with our public sector partners on this occasion when it was appropriate to do so with Southern Water, who have been exceptional on this and have come to the table and put their money where their mouth is, and they are helping those families directly. So when you combine that and what we did with the Portsmouth Older Persons Energy Payment, and you shine a light on 11.9% cut out the whole household support fund, who knows where that money's gone? Because, there was that big black hole, wasn't there? The one that's never actually been properly explained. Now, the thing for me in all of this is this. This is no longer a cost of living crisis. This is the abject failure of successive governments to grow the economy. And why are we failing to grow the economy? Because everybody's got frightened to death of mentioning Brexit. Well, let's put it back in the room today, because Brexit is causing this. Everybody knows that. It is causing damage to the long-term sustainability of our economy. Now, we accept we are no longer in Europe. But the people who took us out and the people who stood to one side and allowed that to happen, who were then the official opposition, need to come up with a plan now that they're in government to deal with the consequences of their action. That's the reality. Everybody running around hand-wringing saying, we don't know what we're going to do. That's not going to work. We need sensible, pragmatic policies in government and civil servants to be engaged who know what they're doing. Because I keep seeing letters come from ministers that don't make sense. They're nonsense. The Iropi one is the tip of the iceberg. I literally received a letter a couple of weeks ago that I read and I couldn't tell you what it meant, and I forwarded it on to other people and asked them if they knew what it meant, and they didn't know what it meant either. So somebody needs to go and put a rocket up Westminster and get people to pull their finger out and start governing this country for the good of all of the people that live here, because the consequences of not doing so are to fuel a divisionist populist narrative which is pushing people who quite rightly feel left behind into the hands of people who have nefarious objectives. So this is real crunch time now for this country. This government needs to pull its finger out and start caring about the people who need help. And on that note, the report is noted. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes today's meeting. Thank you.